Hello, everybody. My name is Amrita. I'm very happy to be here today in the panel leading the female entrepreneurship session. So, here today we have an amazing lineup of speakers. Of course, we have also a very great moderator who would be actually putting the points in context, and that's Reena Dayal Yadav, who is the director at Microsoft Garage. And I think while we were curating this panel, we were also thinking how to bring in the perspectives in a very strong way, also bringing in some Indo-German context, especially since this is the Indo-German Startup Week and this is the finale day. So that is when we thought of going with Ms. Reena Dayal, and she would be bringing out the perspectives of the various counterparts that we have today. So now, thank you so much, Reena, for being with us here. And now I will give you the floor and also welcome the other panelists for being here and supporting the Indo-German Startup Week powered by SAP. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you so much, Amrita. And it's my pleasure to be here with this very, very eminent group of people, the lineup that we have amongst the panelists. And when Amrita first shared the uh, details of who the panelists are going to be, one of the things that really struck me about each one of the panelists today is that all of you have done something which is, slightly different from the normal path. You've either, you've done different things and you've done something slightly differently from everybody else. And the first thought that came to my mind was around the fact that you are forging your own path, right? You're forging your own path, which is very uniquely you and describes you as a leader in whatever you are doing. The second thing is in some cases, because of the different paths that people have taken, you're also breaking the mold, the preset mold of expectations or stereotypes that people have in terms of the kind of roles that leaders get into. And I'm not going to just talk about women leaders because we have Ullas here as well, and he's also in a working in a very different area. And what I'm going to request is from all of you is to introduce yourself, because I could go through all your accomplishments, but I think since your paths are so unique, it would be great for me and for everybody else to hear from you a little bit of introduction about yourself and how you have in your domain and role, how do you feel you've broken the mold, as you forged ahead? So these two questions in one. And Deepti, if we can start with you.
Thank you, Reena. Thank you, Amrita. Always a pleasure seeing all of you. And Ullas, always a pleasure. So, to briefly introduce myself, my name is Deepti, and I'm the CEO for WeHub, which is a government of Telangana initiative. And we are India's first and only government-led incubator for women entrepreneurs. And we work with two different distinct group of women entrepreneurs. One is the urban tech-enabled entrepreneurs in this field of technology and in any aspect of it, and and also they are from the very urban landscape. The second group of entrepreneurs that we work with are actually the social entrepreneurs, the entrepreneurs from the tier 2 and tier 3 parts of the state and across the country. So far we have worked with almost 3,400 women entrepreneurs across the board, and we have about 8 parallel programs that we are running right now. And it's such a pleasure being here. And Reena, look forward to all the amazing conversations we're going to be having. So thank you.
Sure. Could you also share some light on how you believe you've broken the mold and forged ahead?
Okay. Interestingly enough, I actually work for the government of Telangana, but I'm not from the government. I'm actually a hardware engineer. I have been a girls in STEM kind of a symbol since my childhood. I've gone to an all-girls school, and then I went to an engineering college, and I was actually, I think, about one in 6 girls and about a class of 55 people. And after that, I did my master's from the US, and I worked there for about 15 years. So it was all great. I don't know if it is called as breaking barriers, Reena, but one thing is that I always made sure that in my 15-year career, no two jobs had the same profile. So I don't know if it is called as a good thing or a bad thing, but the beauty has been that I've always enjoyed what I was doing, though it was not normal for everybody who was noticing from outside, right? Because a lot of times convention has told us that if you continue and forge ahead in the same path, you'll become the big shot of one company someday. But I've always made sure that, given that I spend 8 to 10 hours of my day at my work, doing my professional responsibilities, I wanted to always enjoy it and learn. So that is one thing I've done. And 15 years later, working in the Valley, I just moved back to India within 2 days, and I've been working with the government. So you go from corporate America in California to Indian government within 2 days, and that I think has been a very wonderful experience. But I don't know if it is breaking the mold or whatever else. But I've always followed my I will not say passion, but I've always followed what I wanted to do, and in spite of not knowing it, I always dove headfirst in. And sometimes, yes, I got hurt big time in my head, but other than that, I think it's always been motivating me and driving me every single day. And I'm really happy at my job, and I think that reflects in a lot of my personal stuff also. Yeah, I hope it answers.
Yes, thank you so much. And I think that is pretty much breaking the mold, right? The stereotype of, having a long corporate career. So taking a jump, in 2 days you took the decision, right? That's what I hear. And you actually got into the government. So, and you're doing great work. So thank you for sharing that. Lena, could you introduce yourself and also talk about how you're breaking the mold?
Sure. Thank you, Rina, for the fantastic moderation and also for being part of the discussion here. So my name is Lena Behrens. I am the Managing Director at Flying Health. We are an ecosystem for next generation healthcare. And we work every day with industry leaders within healthcare, but also with companies that are wanting to move towards healthcare to really shape the future of health provision. And the way I would say I'm breaking the mold is that I'm really passionate to use private sector approaches to tackle social problems. So I started my career back in strategy consulting and already worked quite often in the intersection between technology advantage and healthcare, and then moved on to a social enterprise, based in London, where we looked at innovative ways to finance health and social care and how we can make sure that we use data analytics and new approaches to really improve the outcomes for patients and also the work for healthcare professionals. And then when Brexit, well, it still hasn't happened 100%, but when it was supposed to happen, I decided to leave London and moved. I wanted to move to Berlin at the time, but then decided to move to Colombia, to Bogota, to join one of the largest company builders in Latin America. And there again, my passion was to use private sector approaches to tackle social problems. So we worked in a variety of industries such as education, transport, finance, making sure that people have access to finance. And I learned quite a lot over there and had a fantastic time. I was part of the internal firefighters and always went in and supported the teams whenever it was needed. And then about nearly 3 years ago now, I decided to move back to Germany, having spent 13 years abroad, and joined Flying Health here in Berlin. And now we're focusing on the whole topic of innovation in healthcare. And what we see is that it's very easy for people who have done the same kind of job to say, it'll continue, it'll stay the same, nothing will change, things are moving so slowly. Data security is always a kind of a deal breaker for innovation. And what we do at Flying Health is to work with everyone who's involved in shaping the future of healthcare to make sure that they understand what does it look like, what do they need to do, what does it mean for their business model, whom do they need to talk to, whom should they collaborate with, be it startups or other innovators or other companies. And that's something that I absolutely love doing. But at the same time, it's also making sure that people actually realize to what extent change is needed and needs to happen. And the reason why I'm here today is also because I'm one of the vice presidents at the German Startup Foundation, and thus working with a team here to make sure that not only within healthcare, but across industry, this drive for innovation and for new ideas and startups is established more strongly in Germany.
Yeah, so thank you so much. And I think to reference to your last conversation, I think the number of startups in healthcare and medical space is quite high in this region. So I think this is a great, probably a great opportunity for both of us. Thank you so much, Lena, for sharing that. And Soumya, if you could go next, talk a little bit about yourself and how you're breaking the mold.
Thank you, Reena, for the opportunity, allowing me to speak today. And yeah, I mean, I came here in 2016 for my PhD, researching in aviation industry, researching about visualization, Industry 4.0. I had the opportunity to gather knowledge on the German market and how things work here. So basically, I strategized a business model and I founded my company here in May 2018. So I'm the co-founder and CEO of Foviatech GmbH. So as far as breaking the mold goes, I somehow feel the secret of change is not to focus all our energy on fighting the old, but on building what is new and what we have to do for the future generation, as Socrates famously said once. So that way, I deeply focus my energy towards innovation and to develop cost-optimal products and solutions. So basically, I have an aerospace background, and the field can be innately defined to be patriarchal. So starting a company in such a field and introducing cutting-edge technologies like artificial intelligence and graphene is a greater challenge. But somehow I've been working hard to bring things together and to develop a lot of products and solutions that could be contributing to the generations looking forward. However, I have been fortunate enough to, by breaking the mold and forging ahead, just by adding one basic accessory that is required for a woman, which is confidence. So yeah, we have been going forward good enough till now.
Thanks, Soumya. I think very well said. Focus on, not focus on what is existing, but focus on the new and forging ahead. I think that's very well said. And I really love your statement about that one accessory, which is the most important, is to wear your confidence. Yeah. Thank you so much. And over to you, Ulas. If you could also introduce yourself and talk about how in your current work you're actually breaking a lot of molds and doing something differently.
Yeah, thanks, Reena. It's a pleasure to be here. I hope I'm super audible to everyone. I would like to stay focused on the theme. I had a moderately successful corporate career, after which I moved into the driven by this desire to be part of the poverty alleviation solutions in the country. I moved into the social entrepreneurship space. A lot of people were afraid I was turning into a jhola wala, but to keep everyone focused on the theme of the day, which is women entrepreneurship and women in leadership, I would rather talk about the work that we're doing right now. I lead a project called Project Here and Now, which is commissioned by the Federal Ministry of Economic Cooperation and Development, which is also known as the BMZ, for an organization called GIZ, of course. So we have a group of 7 people. We are super passionate about the work we are doing, which is to build competencies in women entrepreneurs beyond the big cities, in tier 2, tier 3 cities. And in doing so, we've also been working with some incredibly driven implementation partners, and in Deepti's organization, WeHub is one of them. So we are helping women entrepreneurs from interior Telangana, and I'm sure Deepti will talk about the immense appetite for entrepreneurship that exists among women in that region. In addition, we're also working in the northeast of India, remote places of Manipur, where our entrepreneurs sometimes have to go up a hill to find internet connectivity and be part of our sessions. And similarly in Rajasthan, now we are moving into Maharashtra, Uttar Pradesh. So Yes, I would like to think that we are trying to break the mold as a team, implementation partners, and my team members at GIZ. We're all collectively trying to uh, bring women into the fold of economic activity, and hopefully we will be part of what we are doing, will be a part of the broader economic growth story for the country.
Okay, thanks, Ullas. I think that's very insightful, and it's so heartening to see that you're, creating more opportunities along with Deepthi and people like her for the women entrepreneurs. And I heard you talk about the tier two cities, which is, where the next generation, the real, everything else is, the big cities are all very well connected to
Right.
international opportunities as well. And this is the India as we know it. And I think you're reaching out to the Bharat. So that's really very interesting and very exciting to hear. Um, I'm going to ask the second series of questions to delve a little deeper into the kind of work that you are doing. Since we've already discussed about forging ahead and how each one of you are breaking the mold, so to say. So, Lena, if you could tell a little bit more in detail about the German startups, right? You talked about you are a vice president associated with the German startups, and the kind of participation that you're seeing from women in the startups there, and what are your aspirations for them? That would be great.
Sure. I was actually shocked when I moved back to Germany to what extent the country is still quite traditional and conservative, and to how much further we need to go to establish female leadership, especially also in the startup world. So we just recently published the Female Founders Monitor, a research publication that we publish once a year. And it came out that only 15.7% of all startups in Germany are being founded by women. And if you look at the financing rounds, it's even worse. The number of startups that are founded by women that receive more than 1 million funding is so dramatically lower than by the ones founded by male-only teams. And for me, so I mean, I'm the one of the vice presidents. I'm not working on this full time. It's like a extracurricular activity or however you want to call it. But we have a fantastic team of founders, of investors who are all very strongly engaged in making sure that the voice of startups is being heard, and female leadership, female entrepreneurship is one of the key topics that we are aiming to tackle as well. And for me, one of the most important parts is that we really make sure that there is more transparency towards how, like, what do the numbers actually look like, so that we understand that there is a structural problem. Then talking to investors, making sure that they do have female representation and also more diverse representation. It's not only about gender, but also in general about more diversity in their investment teams, but also in their senior leadership teams. And that we have a few investment funds that are at least government associated. And I think that's one big step if these funds actively make sure to have a more equal representation. And then make sure that in general for the investment teams, there is unconscious biases training. So we often see that somebody with the same background is more likely to trust and thus invest in people who are similar to them, and gender is one of the drivers for this discrepancy. So we are working towards having more kind of more neutral approaches to investment. So one idea is to maybe have somebody review the startup pitches without knowing the gender of the founders, so or the background of the founders, so that it is also more focused on the idea, on the vision, on what they can achieve, rather than do we have any similarities and can we best trust them. And that's an area that is really important to me. And that's, I'm really excited to work with the team, with a full-time team at the association, but also everyone who engages next to their job, their full-time job with it.
All right, thank you so much. I think that's very insightful. And since that is so correlated to the kind of work that Deepthi, you are doing here, Could you chip in your viewpoints on what you are seeing, and what has really helped, in your opinion, to change the situation? For example, I heard Lena talk about blinding, making everybody blind to what the gender of the founders is, and sort of taking that forward. And so, your viewpoints, please.
So it's so interesting to hear Lena speak about it, and it's kind of similarly the same case in India as well. And coming down to VHub, one thing we've started doing is that, again, as I mentioned, we work with two different kinds of entrepreneurs. One is the high potential women entrepreneurs, which means that these are the entrepreneurs who have potential to build the next unicorns. So we take a slightly different approach. What we do is we proudly call them as women entrepreneurs. And when we work with our entrepreneurs in the incubation program, we make them, we kind of try to instill a sense of the fact that, money has no gender and innovation has no gender. And the strength of any startup is in the product. And the last and most important thing is that through our incubation program, we want to make sure that the entrepreneurs understand that by the end of the program, they are calling themselves as entrepreneurs and not as women entrepreneurs. So we want to actually make sure that is the way we do the thing. Otherwise, what happens is that we focus so much on gender that somewhere along the way, being VHub, on a VHub platform, it is obvious it is women entrepreneurs. But if we keep on reiterating the fact that you're a women entrepreneur, it might slightly distract from the fact that they are supposed to actually build a product. Number two, most important thing is that we keep instilling the fact that money has no gender, and the way to tackle any kind of funding hiccup is to make sure VHub will actually enable them to connect to the maximum number of funders, and VHub will also enable the entrepreneurs to pitch in the right way. If it doesn't work out, we come back and take feedback and make sure that we are able to pitch. So this is the approach we are taking. We are relying on the strength of the product, and the fact that the founder happens to be a woman is just incidental, is something that we are working towards. Because if we want to build a truly gender blind ecosystem, the focus should be on innovation and product more than on the gender. And if your product is amazing and if you don't get it, then we have a right basis to go back and ask why not. So that is what we're working on.
Sure, sounds great. And I think, Ullas, you're trying to do support the women entrepreneurs in the tier 2 cities. So have you seen anything different, and are there any different strategies that you are adopting?
It does take some level of sensitization for the ecosystem as much as the women entrepreneurs. I believe far too much work around women entrepreneurship is centered on the entrepreneurs, but it's not the entrepreneurs who have the bias, right? So it's the investors who need to be worked with. It's the service providers who need to be worked with. So we are doing both. We have implementation partners like we have who are implementing our projects, who are interfacing with the entrepreneurs, helping build competencies, them into a space that they can proudly occupy just as confidently as their male parts. But at the same time, we're also working with the ecosystem at large, trying to work with investors or financial institutions, service providers, mentors, all of them, to help them better add value to the lives of these women entrepreneurs.
Sure. Okay, that's a very valid point. I think we've heard three very distinct viewpoints. One around, the German startups. The other is women's, startups in India, and then this whole aspect about the ecosystem as well and how that needs to be sensitized. Soumya, you are a startup founder, so now that's why I've come last to you after having this discussion. As an entrepreneur, what would you want, right? What is it that you want to tell these three people? What is it that they can do for you?
Yeah, that's a very interesting question, because it has been 2 years since we are in operations, and the one important feature which I would like to put forward in this arena is about the investments and investors' way of thinking. Yeah, to some extent, investors look into if you're a female or a male, the gender bias is existing. But basically, products is what they invest in. So when we are able to rightly pitch in, and when we are able to earn their trust, that pretty much closes the deal and it defines who you are. So I've always been looking into investors who can strategically support us from our business aspects, and also help us, bring in the experience that we lack as founders and as young entrepreneurs. So as this is my opinion or my point of view when investments are considered. And from a technological point of view, we are working with high-end technologies, and indeed, everything has its own pros and cons. So yeah, but we are trying to forge every unique aspects of the technologies and bringing it forward for the industry. So let's see how it goes.
Okay, you don't need any help, is what I heard, right? You're
No.
there, you decided you have to do something, and this is very much in line what Deepti wants the startups to do, right? And Lena is, sort of trying to, Lena and Ullas are also trying to make sure that this is what you do. So you're already, looks like we're already moving in the right direction. We have the right kind of founders with us, right? And I think that's a very, very positive, hopeful direction that we have reached. And as I'm saying that, I'm realizing it's 5:35 and we have 10 minutes. We could probably open up for some audience questions. So any audience questions? This is the time for folks to start asking those questions.
There is one question, I think it's for T-Hub. They're asking if, V-Hub, they're asking if there is any sector specificity, but I think this question can be directed both for V-Hub and maybe GIZ as well, if you're looking at any particular sectors of startups.
Plus?
The question was to VHub. So I'll just answer for my program. We're sector agnostic. We don't focus on one. So we keep saying this, that we can't help anyone become a better farmer. So we can help them build a very good agricultural enterprise. So we focus on the business competencies. We don't focus on the domain expertise itself. So yes, but we've seen a natural clustering around certain sectors: food processing, textiles, crafts, in some regions, education, otherwise services. So yeah, that's broadly about our project. I'll pass it on to Deepti.
Thank you. So yes, coming down to VHub, we are sector agnostic. So what that means is we work with entrepreneurs from any sector. But there are few areas that we don't do a lot of work on, and they are actually in the aspect of trading and services. And the reason for this is, and I will have Soumya and Lena answer, for somebody to be called an entrepreneur, it is enterprise grounding and employment generation. For VHub, that is a key mandate. And trading and services, while they're amazing entities and they're absolutely needed, for the kind of innovation we are looking at, I think that has not come out really well. But other than that, we are sector agnostic in every which manner, and we can support any entrepreneur in any sector at all, except trading and services. Thank you. I hope it answers.
So taking a cue from that, Lena, have you seen any women entrepreneurs gravitating towards any specific sectors themselves?
What we see is that often, so in the monitor that we published, we see that often it is areas such as healthcare, for instance, which is also my area. Climate change or sustainability is something that we see quite a few women, or if you compare it to male founders, there's a higher proportion of women tackling that area. But apart from that, actually, we see women being present in a lot of different areas. The one part that I would maybe mention, which is similar to, or linked to healthcare, is the whole area of femtech, which we have seen increasing quite significantly. And there, the majority, the majority of founders are women. I assume that will change as well, as men will also realize that it's a huge untapped population that has certain problems that might need addressing also through digital tools. But those are the three areas that we see.
Sure. Are there any other questions, Amrita?
No, I don't see them, but I have, perhaps I can ask one last question. I mean, this was also something that kept on coming up in the chats continuously. So, what is one barrier, especially from maybe Soumya or even Lena with her experience? What is one barrier of internationalization that you would say, and what is your perception towards India? This was one quite a repeated chat question in the summit.
If I may answer, the first barrier which I somehow feel is the bureaucracy and the politics, which is in India. So I don't want to be too much opinionated on this topic, but this is something which I personally experienced during my studies or yeah, during my studies in India as well. It's quite a big barrier. And let's just forget about female entrepreneurship in India because we have a very conservative background. Unless until you are grown up with a parent who is like open-minded and who is focusing their whole energy and their trust on you to go forward with your education, and as a woman with go forward with your education and to start your business is a big thing. So I'm really fortunate enough that my parents kept the trust, and I was able to gain the confidence from them by hard work and determination. So I mean, this is something which India has to work on, even from being a conservative society. So this is my opinion at the end.
So we cannot end on that note, right, Soumya? So I have to ask Deepti to actually say, what are you going to say to convince Soumya that this is changing and this is no longer as much of a barrier as she thinks, based on her experience?
So one thing is that, Reena, I have a lot to say on that. So Lena, why don't you answer the question on what is the barrier to internationalization? And once that is done, we'll come back to this topic. We can close off on a positive note.
Sure. But the question is, what are the barriers to internationalization? Yeah, okay. So I think internationalization always sounds much easier on paper than it actually is in practice, especially due to cultural differences. And as much as I would love to have a world where it wouldn't matter from which country you're from or which gender you are or which color your hair or whatever has, but unfortunately right now, and I hate saying that, but right now it's not quite the world that we're living in. And just believing that a product that works in one market or an approach or a business model or even the way of working within a team can just be translated from one country to the next without any adaptation is often something that it just doesn't work. And I've seen a lot of founders who are somewhat aware of it, but still don't quite see to what extent things need to change. And one advice I would have to answer more positively rather than talking only about barriers is really to understand who are the right people you need to talk to in the country that you're thinking of entering. Who can help you understand the cultural differences, those nuances that in your own country you would like it wouldn't even occur to you, but you would really read between the lines between what is being said. Who are people who can help you with that translation? Who are people who can open doors for you, who can make sure that you are at the right time, at the right spot, and who can open networks for you, which I think is actually a key part for female entrepreneurs and female leaders to really think about. Not only to do a fantastic job, and I agree, yes, it is about product, but it is also about knowing how to get experts in and how to make sure you connect to the right people at the right time.
Sure, thanks. I think that makes a lot of sense. And I think now, Deepti, since you've heard Soumya and you heard Lena, what are your thoughts?
So I agree with Soumya in a little bit, but one thing I would like to remove from that in her entire conversation is that there's a lot of female there, but I think being an entrepreneur in India, it's difficult. So if we understand that aspect, I think that will that is something that I would like to really correct, because it is not a conservative society. I think more importantly, we are a very risk-averse society, and there is a slight difference in that. The reason for that is education is always seen as a step to the next economic strata in India, and entrepreneurship is somehow seen as a very risky move. So in that aspect, I think for any entrepreneur, Soumya, it is very difficult. Number one. Second thing is that most importantly, if you realize a lot of the entrepreneurs, a lot of the issues that are there around internationalization and a lot of support mechanisms that were previously not available and I can say previously not available till about 5 years ago. Government of India and many state governments have done beautifully in that aspect. So one example of that is Startup India. So instead of like any entrepreneur having to deal with government departments, we've actually created separate facilitation cells within every state and federal government. So at the federal level, we have Startup India, and at the state level, we have some kind of a startup Telangana or something like that, Invest Telangana or some kind of local mechanisms that are there. So most importantly, the fact of the matter is that Samya, and all the female entrepreneurs out there, if you want to internationalize or do anything at all, you should actually just come to VHub and we'll help you out with everything else.
Great.
All right. Thank you so much. I am afraid I think we ran out of time. And so a very big thank you to Leena, Ullas, Deepti, Soumya. I think I really enjoyed this discussion, and I hope some good has come out of it as well in terms of inspiring other entrepreneurs who may be listening to this session. And over to Amrita now.
And thanks, Reena, for being a wonderful moderator, by the way.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's a pleasure being here.
Thanks. Meeting all.
Thank you very
Reena.
much.
Thank you,
I
Amrita.
think now
All my
we
fellow
can
co-panelists.
close the session. Thank you so much for everybody. Thank you for joining in.
Bye.
Bye.
Nice meeting you, Reena.